You know, when I look at American society, what I absorb with American people, especially when it comes to a lot of young people these days, and I see just how mentally and emotionally unstable so many of these young people are. And of course, me being a mentally and emotionally unstable person because I generally suffer from mental and emotional problems, but more or less, I do have an IQ that's above average, so I tend to go from a combination of genius to insanity. Plus, I just taken my medication, so I'm going to be a lot more mentally and emotionally stable to make this video. And me living in America for the last 25 years, and I've definitely had my ups and downs. At this point, it's been more or less mostly down, but I am working my way to go back up. But anyway, this video is not about me. When I look at the situation with American society, and when you see the catastrophe of what's been going on, particularly like last year, the year 2002, we had more mass shootings in that one single year than entirely of the last 10 to 12 years before that. In one year, we had more mass shootings than the entirety of 10 to 12 years before. And 2003 has already started off with a handful of mass shootings already. And you wonder why does it keep happening here in America? And I can say I've had urges to go on mass shootings when I was a young man. When I used to get bullied and made fun of, I used to literally fantasize about going into classrooms where people used to make fun of me and they would bully me. And I would fantasize about coming in with AK-47 and shooting people. And this was way before, you know, the situation with Columbine High School. I mean, I was born in 79. So I'm more or less of an 80s kid in my early childhood, even though throughout the 80s, my childhood was not spent here in the United States, but it was spent in Melbourne, Australia, a place where I was actually born. My father was Aboriginal and my mother was West African. And of course, I had experienced a lot of mental and physical abuse from my alcoholic Aboriginal father. Both me and my mother used to get regular beatings until my mother had it one day and she just left him. And she met up with a friend and she got a job working for this wealthy American couple that was working in Australia, in which she fell in love with the son of that particular individual, and he had got a good job over here in America for an engineering company, and there when she married her, I moved over here with them, and therefore here I am in the States. And I would say from that point forward, my childhood was pretty good, even though my mental illness still claimed victory in the end. Well, not really, but anyway, I remember like in the early 90s when I had started to establish in America my first years of being here. I was in special need classes, even though I was in and out of special need classes because my IQ was above average and I still got good grades and everything, and I would go in and out, but my mentally and unstable fits and my just sheer self-stimming where I would that would always put me back in the special needs classroom so I could never truly advance. But I remember so many kids back then were being diagnosed ADHD, right? I would say what, late 80s, early 90s. You know, ADHD was the main thing people were being diagnosed. Of course, you had people who were diagnosed, with social anxiety or general anxiety. That was a regular thing, but ADHD was the main thing of how so many kids were being diagnosed, and that everyone was being prescribed Ritalin, or what was it? Yeah, that was the main thing back in those days. It was Ritalin or Wellbutrin. But I remember, like later, after I had gotten divorced from my wife in the mid 2000s, I noticed that there was just a sudden buzz of people being just diagnosed with being bipolar. And I can say with a lot of American people in the last 10 years, you have so many people who openly admit and say that, oh, I'm bipolar, or I'm autistic, or I have this mental or emotional disorder. It's almost if these particular disorders and having them has becomes a means to their identity. And I can remember during my time that if you were diagnosed with manic depressive and all that, now you would definitely not tell anybody because people would judge you. And I can say, considering the amount of people that were diagnosed as bipolar in the early to mid 2000s, the majority of them were not bipolar, if not all of them were not. Because if you actually seen an actual manic depressive person, because I've been to a handful of psych wards and I've been around actual manic depressive people, it is a very serious condition. And it's not something that people should be diagnosed lightly. Which what really had pissed me off during that particular time, because I know people who really suffer from the condition. When they started just labeling people this bipolar disorder for whatever reason, it took away the credibility of those who were really suffering from it. And you see how they went from manic depressive to bipolar. You see how they watered down the names to where it won't sound as, you know, maniac. Doesn't sound as, threatening. But when I look back, and I remember on the TV commercials, they would always advertise things like Abilify, or what was it? All these particular different bipolar medications that I remember. And I thought that, oh well, this makes sense. Because during my time in the 90s, when I was here in special needs, everyone was being diagnosed ADHD, and I believe back in the days, people being diagnosed ADHD, it was a lot more legit. But now, when I see people all of a sudden being diagnosed bipolar, you're wondering, like, how is all these people diagnosed bipolar suffering from such a serious condition? And when I notice these people, and I see on television, oh, they're selling all these different kind of medications, and I think, oh, this is motivated by big pharma. So in actuality, the only reason why these people are being suddenly diagnosed with bipolar medication is for the purpose to sell these medications to make money. You see, big pharma and the salesmen and all the psychologists and psychiatrists, they all, were in one system working hand in hand. It was all about profit and making money. And that's one of the problems with American society, or general society, is the all great American dollar. And people are wondering why, just the desperation of everything with male leadership is being undermined and destroyed. Gender politics is going on nowadays. And it's so bad now that you have a lot of young men who are looking for any means of any form of a alpha male representatives to look up to. even if it's someone ridiculous as Andrew Tate. But that's how bad American society is. And all this goes hand to hand. If you don't deal with the mental and emotional predisposition of people, or particularly the spiritual condition of people, then your society is doomed to fail.